Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. And before I tell you what happened to me, I need you to sit with this story for a minute, because it still doesn't feel real to me, even now. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And it means more to me than you know that you're here listening to this. I was 19 years old when my whole world folded in on itself in the space of about 90 seconds. I remember the bathroom tile was cold under my knees. I remember the little window on the test and how I stared at those two pink lines until they blurred, willing them to change into one. They didn't. I sat there for almost 20 minutes before I could make myself stand up. And when I finally did, I walked out of that bathroom holding the test like it was something that might explode. My mother was in the kitchen. I don't even know why I brought it to her first instead of hiding it, burying it, pretending it never happened. Maybe some small, stupid part of me thought she would hug me. Maybe I thought she would be scared with me instead of scared of me. She took one look at what I was holding, and her face didn't just fall. It hardened, like something inside her had slammed a door shut. "What is that?" she said. It wasn't even a question. I couldn't speak. I just held it out further, like showing her again would somehow make it easier to say out loud. "Get out!" she screamed. The sound of her voice bounced off the kitchen tile, off the cabinets, off every wall of the only house I had ever lived in. "Get out. You've wrecked your future." I remember thinking, in some far-off, disconnected part of my brain, that it was such a strange thing to scream. Not "how could you," not "who is the father," not even "are you okay?" Just that I had wrecked something. As if my whole worth had been a china plate, and I'd just watched it shatter on the floor in front of her. My father didn't yell. That was almost worse. He walked past me in the hallway without looking at me, went to the front door, and opened it. He held it open with one hand, staring at the welcome mat like it had personally offended him, waiting for me to walk through it. 19 years old, 5 weeks pregnant, and my own father was holding a door open so I would leave faster. I want to tell you I fought back. I want to tell you I screamed right back at them, that I demanded to know how two people who raised me could turn into strangers over two pink lines. But I didn't. I picked up the duffel bag I kept under my bed for sleepovers that never happened anymore, because at 19 you don't really have sleepovers, and I put in what I could grab in about 4 minutes. A phone charger, some clothes, a photo of my grandmother, the only person in that family who had ever made me feel like I mattered without conditions attached. And then I walked out the door my father was holding open, and I heard it close behind me before I even reached the sidewalk. I want to pause here and ask you something, because I think it matters. If you've ever been in a moment where the people who were supposed to catch you instead pushed you, hit that like button right now, wherever you are. I promise you, this story gets better. It gets so much better, but I need you to feel exactly how far down I started, so that later you understand exactly how far I climbed. The next 8 months were the hardest of my life. I moved in with a coworker from the diner where I waited tables, a woman named Priya who barely knew me but took one look at my face on her doorstep and just said, "Come in, we'll figure out the rest later." I picked up extra shifts until my feet swelled and my back screamed. I learned how to budget for prenatal vitamins instead of new shoes. I learned that pride tastes a lot like humility when you have no other choice. I called my mother twice during those months. Once in my second trimester, when I was scared and alone and just wanted to hear a voice that had known me my whole life. She hung up before I finished my second sentence. The second time was 3 days before my due date. My father answered. He told me, in a voice as flat as a closed ledger, that they had moved on and that I should figure out my own mess. So I did. I went into labor on a Tuesday night in March. Priya was working a double shift she couldn't get out of. I called an ambulance myself, breathing through contractions in an apartment that wasn't even mine, and I gave birth in a hospital room with no family in the waiting area, no one holding my hand, no one to hear my daughter's first cry except a nurse who had never met me before that night and a doctor checking the clock. I named her Wren because wrens are small and they're fierce, and they survive winters that should kill them. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel and turn on that bell notification, because you do not want to miss what happened 6 years later when my parents came walking back into my life with open arms. And my mother took one look at the little girl standing beside me and went completely, utterly still. 6 years is a long time. It's long enough to build an entire life out of nothing if you're stubborn enough, and I was. I finished my associate's degree 2 classes at a time, at night, after Wren was asleep. I worked my way up from waitressing to managing the diner, and then Priya, who by then wasn't just my roommate but the closest thing to family I had, helped me put together the paperwork to open a small catering business out of that same diner's kitchen after hours. It started with birthday cakes for the neighborhood. Then it was baby showers. Then it was weddings. By the time Wren turned 6, I owned that diner outright. Priya and I bought it together when the old owner retired, and I'd renamed it after my daughter, Wren's Table, painted in gold letters above the door. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, I was proud, and for the first time since I was 19 years old, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a girl who'd wrecked her future. I saw a woman who'd built one with her bare hands. Wren is everything. She has my dark hair and someone else's storm gray eyes, and a laugh that makes strangers in grocery stores turn around and smile without meaning to. She used to help me frost cupcakes standing on a step stool in the kitchen, flour on her nose, taking her job very seriously. She calls Priya Aunt Pri. She has never once asked me why she doesn't have grandparents, because in her world, she never felt like she was missing anything. I made sure of that. So you can imagine my shock when I looked up from the register one Saturday afternoon and saw my mother and father standing in the doorway of my restaurant. They looked older. Softer around the edges in a way that surprised me, like 6 years of comfortable living had worn down whatever hardness had let them close that door on me. My mother was holding a gift bag. An actual gift bag, with tissue paper poking out the top, like she'd walked into a party she'd been invited to all along. "Claire," my mother said, and her voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since I was a little girl, and she used to sing me to sleep, before everything, before the 2 pink lines and the door and the ambulance I called myself. "Claire, honey, we saw the write-up in the paper, the restaurant. We're so proud of you, proud." That word landed strange in my chest, like a key that didn't quite fit the lock anymore. My father stepped forward, and for a second, I thought he might actually reach for me, might actually hug his daughter for the first time in 6 years. "We want to meet her," he said instead. "Your daughter. We want to be in her life, Claire. We're her grandparents. We have every right." I remember feeling something cold slide down my spine at those words. Every right. As if showing up now, 6 years later, in nice clothes with a gift bag, erased the part where they'd opened a door and let me walk into the world completely alone. But before I could answer, before I could decide what I even wanted to say to 2 people who had ceased, in every way that mattered, to be my parents, I heard the small scrape of sneakers on the tile behind me. Wren had come out from the back, still in her little apron, flour dusted across one cheek like war paint. She walked up beside me the way she always did, half hiding behind my leg, peeking out at the strangers in the doorway with the open, unguarded curiosity that only a 6-year-old can manage. "Mommy," she said, tugging my shirt, "who's that?" My mother's eyes moved from me to my daughter, and I watched in real time the exact moment the color drained out of her face. She didn't answer Wren. She didn't even seem to hear the question. Her hand shot out and gripped my father's sleeve so hard her knuckles went white, and she took one full step backward, like the floor beneath her had suddenly tilted. "That can't be," she whispered. My father's eyes had gone to Wren, too, and something in his expression cracked open. Confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked almost like fear. "Claire," my mother said again, and this time her voice was shaking, barely above a breath. "Claire, how is she?" I felt my pulse pick up because I knew in that instant exactly what they were seeing. I'd seen it myself every single day for 6 years, in the mirror, in old photographs, in the shape of my daughter's face when she laughed. Wren didn't just look like me. She looked like someone else in that family too. Someone my parents recognized immediately, and clearly, painfully well. My mother's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. "Claire," she finally managed, "is she?" "Her name is Wren," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "She's 6. She was born in March, 8.5 months after you 2 put me out on the sidewalk with a duffel bag." My father's jaw tightened. I watched him doing the math in his head, the same math my mother was clearly doing, both of their faces cycling through disbelief and something that looked uncomfortably close to guilt. Because here's what they didn't know. Here's the piece I'd never told them because they never gave me the chance. The father of my daughter was David, My mother's golden nephew. My cousin by marriage. The boy my parents had spent my entire adolescence holding up as the standard I could never quite meet. Straight A's, full scholarship, the family's shining hope. We'd had a short, messy relationship the summer before I found out I was pregnant, one we'd both agreed to keep quiet, because even at 19 I understood exactly how my parents would react if they knew their perfect nephew had gotten their disappointing daughter pregnant. I'd been protecting him. I'd been protecting all of them, really, walking out that door and never once telling them who the father was, because some small, foolish part of me still didn't want to be the reason David's future crumbled the way mine already had. Wren had his eyes. That was the resemblance they were seeing. Storm gray, unmistakable, the exact shade that ran through my mother's side of the family like a signature. He never told you, I said quietly, watching it land on both their faces. Did he? My mother's hand had gone to her mouth. My father looked like the floor had opened beneath him. David is Wren's father, I continued. The nephew you used to compare me to at every single dinner. The one who was too good to make mistakes. He knew. He knew the whole time, and he let you throw me out without saying a single word, because he was scared of losing everything you'd built him up to be. And you? You didn't even ask who the father was. You didn't care enough to ask. You just needed someone to blame. The silence in that restaurant stretched so long I could hear the espresso machine hissing behind the counter. We didn't know, my mother whispered. Claire, if we had known it was David, we would have... You would have what? I asked. Made him marry me? Protected your family name instead of protecting me? That's not comfort, Mom. That's just a different flavor of the same thing. I want to be honest with you, watching at home. I had imagined this moment 100 times over 6 years. I had imagined screaming at them. I had imagined slamming the door the way they'd slammed it on me. But standing there with my daughter's small hand slipping into mine, all I felt was something quieter than rage. Something that felt almost like relief. You don't get to walk in here with a gift bag, I told them, and call yourselves grandparents. Grandparents show up. Grandparents don't open the door for their pregnant 19-year-old and let her walk into the night alone. You made a choice 6 years ago, and I built my entire life around surviving that choice. I am not going to let you rewrite it now because it's finally convenient for you. My father tried one more time. Claire, please. We're sorry. We didn't understand. You understood enough to open the door, I said. That's all the understanding I needed from you. My mother was crying by then, quietly, the kind of crying that comes from someone who knows they've lost something and knows exactly whose fault it is. I felt for her, I really did, somewhere underneath everything else. But feeling for someone and letting them back into your life, into your daughter's life, are two very different things. I'm going to ask you to leave, I said gently but firmly. And I need you to understand this isn't about punishing you forever. It's about protecting her. I looked down at Wren, who had gone quiet, sensing the weight in the room the way children always do. If you ever want to be part of her life, it starts with earning trust you threw away 6 years ago, not with a gift bag on a Saturday afternoon. They left. My mother looked back once from the doorway, and for a moment I almost called out to her. I didn't. That night, after Wren was asleep, I sat on the back steps of the restaurant I'd built with my own 2 hands, and I let myself cry for the first time in years. Not out of grief, but out of something like closure. I had spent 6 years becoming a woman my 19-year-old self couldn't have imagined. I had a home. I had a daughter who laughed like sunlight. I had a family I'd chosen, in Priya, in the community that had shown up for me when my own blood hadn't.